Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. It is August 28, 2013. I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's a look at what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, is America on the verge of launching another war based on bad intel? While new intelligence suggests Assad was not behind the chemical weapons attack, and the rising alternative media powerhouse takes on the public propaganda machine. All this and more on the InfoWars Nightly News.
The White House would like to believe that we have all but forgotten that the Iraq War was waged more than a decade ago after official sources provided bad intel. But now Kerry insists that the Assad regime was behind the chemical weapons attack in Syria, although he has yet to provide evidence of that fact. But now it is the Syrian officials who are saying that they have evidence that the U.S. aided terrorists in the chemical attack. Speaking to reporters outside the Four Seasons Hotel in Damascus, Syria's deputy foreign minister has now come out on record in declaring that the U.S., Britain, and France were instrumental in aiding the chemical attacks on Syria through a network of terrorists inside the country. He added that he had presented UN chemical weapons inspectors with evidence that armed terrorist groups had used sarin gas in all the sites of alleged attacks. The Syrian official now says that the next target will be Europe. Well, it'll be interesting to see just what evidence was provided to the UN. Now, we've been telling you that the U.S. was somehow involved with the chemical weapons attack in Syria, even if it was just arming the Syrian rebels who are affiliated with al-Qaeda. But now it is public knowledge that the U.S. has ties with terrorist groups. Anthony Gucciardi of StoryLeak joins me in the studio with more on that.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So tell me, who are we fighting with?
Well, the fact of the matter is it used to be a conspiracy theory that Obama and his handlers were arming the Syrian rebels, which are linked up with al-Qaeda, admittedly, and they go around flying al-Qaeda flags. But now it is public knowledge. It is on public record that we are funding directly al-Qaeda. And more so, we're actually funding the Syrian rebels who likely carried out, in fact, they did carry out the chemical attacks in order to launch war into Syria. So, in fact, we have one piece here as well from The Independent. Does Obama know he's fighting an al-Qaeda side? And it says, he's fought for the very first time in history, the United States will be on the same side as al-Qaeda. It goes on to say the men who destroyed so many thousands on 9/11 will be fighting alongside the very nation whose innocents so cruelly murdered almost exactly 12 years ago. So what it comes down to now is, once again, we've seen this correlation where we're called conspiracy theorists, we're called crazy for saying that we're funding al-Qaeda now and we're going with al-Qaeda and aiding the Syrian rebels against Assad, against the regime that now the Syrian rebels are trying to destroy. But then, of course, a little bit later, about several months, 8, 9, 10 months later, the mainstream media now pushes it as breaking news. And you will see on this document it has 51,000 Facebook shares. That means it's been seen by probably millions of people, 4,000 Twitter tweets, 4,000 tweets. So what that comes down to is, it's like when we say it, it's crazy. But when the mainstream media says it, we all better bow down and just immediately show everyone, oh my gosh, it's true. And they're surprised every time.
Exactly.
It's a pattern over and over again. And we're calling it 10, 12 months before almost every single time. And then the mainstream media is forced to admit we were right and cover it as if it's an exclusive breaking news piece when we've already known about it.
Well, now we've seen this quite a few times throughout history where the allies become the bad guy, but then there are allies again, and we're seeing this again.
Let's go back to the 80s for a minute. The recently declassified CIA documents, one of the things I also covered with you guys, it comes out now, it turns out, that we aided Saddam, helped Saddam with the CIA and Reagan at the time, and I mentioned earlier on the Alex Jones program, everyone hails Reagan as kind of a demigod. And he did some good stuff, but of course he helped fund and get ready of these chemical attacks on Iran on behalf of Iraq, because they needed to solidify an Iraqi win over the war. So we've seen before launching these chemical attacks and helping to do so as a pretext for full-scale war. So what's happening now? It's the same exact pattern. And I also want to talk about this. Syrian rebels pledged loyalty to al-Qaeda. And it says basically the rebels will go ahead and they'll join anybody at all, including al-Qaeda, will help them to overthrow Assad. It doesn't matter if they're a terrorist organization. And then it also mentions that, yeah, the Western countries, like the United States, are funding all of this, and they're funding al-Qaeda now directly because the Syrian rebels team up with them. They say, the rebels in Syria have one common enemy, Assad, and they will collaborate with any faction allowing them to topple his regime. Now, something interesting, you actually brought this up earlier, Leanne. I have to give you credit for that. Check out what Carney said. I don't have it here, actually, but Carney said, we're not trying to topple the regime. We're not going in to topple the regime. You know, we're just going to try and maintain peace, like they said with Iraq. But look at that statement. Anything to topple his regime. Direct contradiction.
Yeah.
The Syrian rebels are telling it as it is because they don't care. They're absolute insane al-Qaeda terrorists. They're going in to blow up everything. They're beheading Christians. Washington Times right here. They're beheading priests. They're burning Christian villages, innocents, using small knives. You know how specific and disgusting that is? Small little knives. It could be a butter knife to slice off priest's head to dozens of cheering crowd members from the al-Qaeda/Syrian rebel group saying, yes, kill the priest. And they said that they basically, what they do is either you convert to a Muslim or whatever their distinctive Muslim culture is over there, or they kill you, or you pay a tax to where you get bankrupt and then they probably kill you anyway. That's what we're funding. That's who we're giving heavy weaponry. That's who we're saying are the good guys over there. And that's who now are working with al-Qaeda on record, as they've now admitted. And how long have we been screaming about this? Some of the listeners are probably so tired of hearing about it, but it's just so important. And this is what's going to cause World War III. It's all about the Russian hot war right now, because they're backing Assad and we're backing the Syrian rebels.
It's just incredible. So are you going to do a full report on this video or something up on storyleak.com?
Yeah, definitely. I've done a few reports, and I've collaborated, syndicated off of Infowars.com a lot recently, but definitely more reports on this. Definitely how Syria is actually somewhat of a distraction, because even though it's such an important part, we're actually going in a hot war right now with Russia. No one's talking about this. The Russian media is talking about this because they actually, tell their citizens what's going on sometimes because they see America completely different than us. But the foreign media, yeah, they're all over about how really this is a hot war with Russia. It was a proxy war, as the Independent and others have admitted, because we were funding the Syrian rebels versus the Russians funding Assad, and they were clashing. We actually had Israel go in and blow up missile caches which were belonging to the Russians in Syria. So it's turned into a hot war scenario. Russia has 160,000 troops at the ready with naval ships and aircrafts and everything like that, heavy bombers on the lines of Russia. So it's turning into a hot scenario. The only thing is it possible to defuse it, or are the elitist control freaks just so far gone that they're willing to risk it all?
Just amazing. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Apparently it's going to strike tomorrow, so.
Well, we'll see. I don't know if it's going to strike tomorrow, but something's definitely going to happen in the near future, whether it's good or bad. And hopefully it's not bad, but I do see this really as a hot World War III type scenario. If Obama is crazy enough to push forward with this, just say, here's Syrian rebels, have all the supplies you need, have all the weaponry you need, just go out and get Russia's Assad.
Well, Anthony, I hope you're wrong.
Me too. I hope I'm wrong too.
I'm not ready for World War III.
Me neither. Probably be drafted. They're trying to get women into the military now for the draft. They're trying to change it because it's supposed to be constitutional that women and men should be drafted as well.
Well, I'm going to donate a kidney or something and render myself unable. So thank you very much.
Yep, thanks for having me on.
All right, well, it all comes down to that key chemical attack on Syria. But who was it that really carried it out? Intelligence suggests Assad was not behind chemical weapons attack. Phone calls by the Syrian Ministry of Defense intercepted by Mossad and passed to the U.S. reveal that Syrian government officials exchanged panic phone calls with a leader of a chemical weapons unit demanding answers for a nerve agent strike that killed more than 1,000 people in the hours after last week's attack. Why would the Syrian Ministry of Defense be making panicked phone calls demanding answers about the attack if they had ordered it? We don't know exactly why it happened, a U.S. intelligence official told Foreign Policy. We just know it was pretty stupid. So despite not knowing what happened, why it happened, or who ordered it, the U.S. is about to launch a cruise missile attack at Syria, even though the evidence suggests that the Syrian government has absolutely no idea who is responsible for the chemical attack. Now, we are told that the possible use of sarin gas is justification for launching this attack. But are civilized nations being hypocritical? Well, one person who isn't worried about looking like a hypocrite is Obama. Actually, the Syria intervention would reaffirm his biggest flip-flop. In 2007, Obama was asked when presidents have the authority to launch a military strike without congressional authorization. He answered that the president does not have power under the Constitution to unilaterally authorize a military attack in a situation that does not involve stopping an actual or imminent threat. But the statement stands in stark opposition to Obama's view now. The Obama administration is on the cusp of intervening in a Syrian civil war that by all accounts does not pose an imminent domestic threat to the U.S. It would not be the first time Obama acted outside his own previous definition of a presidential war powers. In 2011, Obama authorized the U.S. to join an international coalition that established a no-fly zone in Libya in order to stem the threat of mass slaughter. The growing instability in Libya could ignite wider instability in the Middle East, with dangerous consequences to the national security interests of the United States. So once again, we find Obama poised to strike without any confirmation that U.S. security has been threatened. Now, absent that imminent threat, the U.S. should not be engaged in military action without congressional consent. But so far, the White House has ignored requests from a bipartisan Congress to seek congressional approval to attack Syria. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens tomorrow. Now, if there's still any doubt that politics are being operated under gangster rule, these leaked transcripts of a closed-door meeting between President Putin and Saudi Prince Bandar bin Sultan show that Russia is being intimidated into working with the globalists. Saudis threaten Russia with Olympic terrorist attacks unless it abandons Syria support. In return for Russia's cooperation, Bandar is alleged to have promised to safeguard Russia's naval base in Syria, should Assad be forced from power. I can give you a guarantee to protect the Winter Olympics next year. The Chechen groups that threaten the security of the Games are controlled by us, and they will not move in the Syrian territory's direction without coordinating with us. These groups do not scare us. We use them in the face of the Syrian regime, but they will have no role or influence in Syria's political future. The London Telegraph also reported on the leak, noting the Saudi prince's attempt to further sweeten Putin with a secret sweeping oil deal and a pledge to safeguard Russia's gas contracts should he abandon support for the Assad regime. Now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
More than 60 movies and documentaries all in one place at Infowars.com/show.